We've got our last speaker who's just turned up recently, and that is Martin Hedley. Marty works across the airfield there at Pioneer Aero, and he's currently working on the Douglas SBD Dauntless. So he's going to give us a bit of a chat about that.
Righty, as Dave said, I'm Martin. I work across the way there. And we're in the process of restoring a Dauntless. Bureau number 36175, squadron code B22. So throughout this I'll refer to it as B22. That's what we call it. We may give it another name, but that's what it is. We're doing it for Military Aviation Museum. They're over in Virginia Beach on the far side of America. And the story is I got given a ring one Saturday by their then chief engineer. We'd been over there earlier and put together a P39, and so we'd made friends. I got a ring by this guy, and he said, do you want to restore a Dauntless? And I'm going, yes. How the hell am I going to do that? So we never actually got a chance to go over and see it. COVID put paid to that. So anyway, so the story of this aeroplane is it was accepted into the US Navy October 43, assigned for training on Wolverine. Wolverine, for those of you who don't know, is a converted paddle steamer operating on Lake Michigan, training the US Navy pilots. Unfortunately, she was only around a couple of months, crashed on January 2044 with only Lieutenant Charles L. Ford III aboard. He was on approach. The plane in front of him had an issue and fouled the deck. He got waved off, didn't apply power, crashed into the water. He survived the war. I've spoken via Facebook to his son. The plane got pretty smacked up and came to rest 54 metres below the surface. She remained there until 1944, and when it was raised by A&T Recovery, they've raised a whole bunch of aircraft of various ilk. She then sat in storage at Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, being used as a Christmas tree for other aircraft that had combat history and what have you. And until the current owners, or Jerry Yagen at the time, got hold of it. That's Lieutenant Charles L. Ford III. So that's the crash record, the accident report card, and it explains quite clearly the story, which is quite a cool thing to have around. That's what it looked like when it came to the surface. If we'd got it like that, we'd have been amazed. Now, and it wasn't, unfortunately. So they lifted it to the surface, or near the surface, towed it to the water's edge, to the dock, and then lifted it completely out of the water, and that's what it looked like coming out of the water. Considering what it went through, amazing condition. Luckily, freshwater lake, nice and deep, nice and cold. It survived really well. Now, we think something like that would be truly amazing, but we didn't get it like that. Anyway, I couldn't go, or none of us could go over to America to look at it, so we only based everything that we knew on 60 or 70 odd photos that we got sent over. So she was a pretty scary thing. That's the first time we saw it, arriving in mid-2023. All wrapped up, and this is the first time any of us had physically seen the aircraft. So that was a pretty momentous occasion for us. That's how we saw it. Minus the wings, minus the engine, minus all the flight controls. We do have the tailplane and that container that's sitting behind it. As a wee aside, there was another gentleman in the States by the name of Kevin Smith who was attempting to build a Dauntless. He collected a whole container load of parts that we use as donors. When I talk about donor stuff, it's anything out of there. And I'll show you pictures of a donor fuselage a little bit later. But yeah, that is about the biggest cache of Dauntless bits on the planet, and us having access to it is amazing. Because yeah, every time you go in there, you find something new and interesting to put on the project. One very corroded, bent firewall. So that's what we are faced with. The front end is far more corroded than the back end for some reason, and there are strangely some bits that are perfect right next to some bits that are completely and utterly corroded away. So that makes life interesting. Looking into the cockpit, you can see some bits have been taken out of there. There's a few bits missing. So that's what we saw when it arrived, sorry. That's the gunner's cockpit looking forward. The Dauntless, although it was a dive bomber, it had amazing technology in it. It had radar for searching for enemy shipping. It had a smoke system that could be fitted for generating smoke screens. It had flares for dropping parachute flares. It had dual controls, so if your pilot was wounded or knocked out, the gunner could at least get away from the enemy action. And of course, it had the rear guns to look after them if the Japanese were chasing at them. That's looking aft. The turret has gone, but we do have a new build turret. We don't have any guns, but we'll sort that out. Ammunition boxes there. Looking down the back end, you'll see there's a lot of very good looking parts in there. We are anticipating using about 75% of the fuselage structure will fly again. Some of it needs repairs, some of it just literally clean the old paint off and repaint it, and it's perfect. We've been through some of those already, you'll see that. Flare tubes, so you load the parachute flares in the top, and then the gunner has control of the doors individually, and he can drop them out and they'll deploy. That's underneath the instrument panel. You can see there some of the components are amazingly good condition. Some of them are complete and utterly balls of corrosion. So that made it a challenge to get apart, but we started by stripping all that sort of stuff out. That took a couple of weeks, getting everything out, made a big pile of it. Then we had to split the fuselage in half, and you'll see in a little bit, the fuselage has a production joint that splits the top and the bottom half, so we reversed that procedure. Some of these big rivets are 1/4 inch diameter. If any of you have hit rivets, that's like hitting a nail. I did some on, not those ones, but some other 1/4 inch ones on Friday, and my hand still hurts. And the stringer there on the right-hand side is the split line. And you can see down in the right-hand corner, there's some numbers. 24 STAL, that converts to modern 2024 T3, so we know we're using the right stuff. The little logo there, I believe, is an ED with a circle and a cross. I'm not sure, but I wonder if it's a nod to Ed Heinemann, who was the Dauntless designer. And at interest, he was the same dude that designed our Kiwi Skyhawks, which I also used to work on, so that was pretty cool. Now all this sort of structure here running through the middle, we had to take all that out, one rivet at a time, before we pulled the fuselage in half. And that's the sort of thing, that's one of the main structures in the front, that's in the cockpit on the right-hand side. All those little shiny dots were once rivet heads that I spent large amounts of time drilling apart. Anyway, now, you've probably listened to me for enough, so here's hoping this plays.
Hi guys, welcome to Pioneer Aero. I'm Martin, the Chief Engineer here. So we're just going to give you a brief update on where the SBD is at. As you can see, we're busy, we have removed all the systems from the fuselage here and the firewall. For point of reference, The ammunition for the top gun sat in here, the guns were mounted up here, lots of hydraulic components inside, the hydraulic tank was around on the wall just out of sight there, lots of electrical equipment mounted in there, and obviously the pilot seat and controls. So what we're in the process of doing now is splitting the top half from the bottom half of the fuselage along this line here. We're very close to doing that. It'll be off within the next couple of days. As we move around, a couple of points of interest. The top hole there was the foothold for the pilot to get in. Down here is where the main fuel tanks were. There was also a fuel tank in the wing just outboard of that. The main undercarriage pivot points are there. Plumbing for the fuel system is all here. We'll remove that pretty soon. Here amongst the B-22 of its identity, another footstep for the gunner to get into. In this opening here, it's called the baggage door. At the front is the tube for the life raft. All the racks in there were where the radio and radar units were mounted. And just around behind was a couple of tubes for parachute flares that could be dropped as required. Moving further back, one arrestor hook, or the remains thereof. More rivets removed for the split. This is where the tail leg was mounted. It will go, this whole piece goes when the top half lifts, so it'll go with that. Amazing how the condition of the paintwork is after 50 years underwater. Even some of the transfers like lift here are still very clear, and we'll replicate all that in due course. The most common asked question we've ever had is, what is this? That's where the life raft lives. And jumping up here, the other access port for the gunner. Sitting on top here, the radar unit. This thing was advanced, it had radar in it, and that which the gunner controlled. The screen was mounted there, his controls are down inside. Turret ring was mounted in there. His two guns were stowed on the back of the ring in that tube there when they weren't in use. Obviously, when they were up and in action. In here, lots of more electronic equipment that the gunner had control over. He also had a rudimentary set of controls, so if the pilot was injured or incapacitated, he could get them back to friendly locations. This big A-frame structure, strongest point on the airframe, the rollover frame to protect the crew in the event of being upside down. And the pilot's cockpit, again, where he did all the things. Instrument panel was mounted here, two 50 cal guns, one either side, and so the plan is to lift the top half of the fuselage off. It'll remove away, then the back half of the fuselage will be removed off, and then all this lower part over the wing gets disassembled. It's actually built as part of the centre section. So, yep, we'll have this top half off in a couple of days. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, cheesy grin there at the end. Okay, now, this is a time lapse of us removing the top half of the fuselage. The actual video is like 15 minutes long, so you don't need to see all that. It gets pretty boring, but this is the interesting bit. I'm sure in the factory they had huge big overhead gantries for doing this, not a couple of forklifts. Okay, so that's what it looks like, the top half removed. The fin is integrally built into that, as you can see there. So that all has to be drilled off. The bottom half, then the back half of that fuselage was split off, and then all the front half above the centre section was drilled apart one rivet at a time. You can, under there, you can see the flap. That's one of the iconic SBD recognisers as the perforated flaps. The dive brakes and the flaps on the main wing panels are the same, so when she's pointing straight down, it's all split open like that, and the iconic shot of it diving, you can see them all full of holes like that. Right, then we had to design a jig and build a jig to hold it straight and locate everything, so we are very lucky we've got access to a complete set of drawings, so we can work out exactly where that firewall, that big heavy steel bit with the blue strop on it, that's the mount where the firewall mounts for the engine mount, on the front of the firewall. The original frame just behind it was bent out of shape, so we couldn't put it directly to that, but behind that everything else was very straight, so we just like that filled up the gap effectively. That's inside, grabbing the bottom of each frame with its individual steel, so we can put each frame in and out as required. Then we built the great big vertical twin tower structure there, as I call it, to hold the wing centre section. That's the bottom side of the wing. The main bomb, sat in that sort of oval shaped looking bit in the middle. And you can see the flap still in place there. Top side as best you can see it. And then it was time to really get into the restoration. So the theory was we'd pull off some bits, restore them, fit them back on to make sure they fit, because we knew the spars were straight and true, fit the new bits back on, then put the restored bits aside, and then slowly work our way down, piece at a time. So once we get to the front, we can just basically put it all back together. That sounds very simplistic, but it's how we are doing it. So there, the flat bay's got a new flat bay skin, and the new bottom rearmost skin there's new. Those flap ribs, you can see there are vertical shiny ribs. I think it's two of them are original, the rest have been replaced. Some of the other bits and pieces that aren't actually fitted there are new, some are original. And the next skin has been removed there. The big cavity, it's a bit hard to see, but that's where the fuel tanks are, so there's a lot of space in there. That doesn't look like it. And we had to remove one of the spar caps on spar 4. Is the cursor working? Anyway, spar 4, the cap, we had some original caps, some donor ones in stock, but the spar 4 lower cap, we did not have a replacement, so we had to make sure it was in good enough condition to reuse before we went too far, so we could get a new one made, but luckily it's been reused. There's 5 spars, each with 2 caps, and we've replaced 2 spar caps. The rest are all original, and one of them was crash damage, not corroded damage, so that's been a massive saving for us. There we go. That's the spar that's still there is number 3. So number 4 directly behind it, sitting on those ribs. 5 and the ribs attaching that are all completely removed and been worked on. The tubular rusty-looking bit in the middle, that's the ram for one of the rams to doing the autopilot. It's got a full autopilot system. I think that's the elevator control ram. Yeah, and it's pretty well completely rusted away, but the plan is to fit all of those rams back in, like new ones, and all the plumbing. We won't make the system work. The tricky box that sat behind the pilot was apparently very fickle to get going, so we'll just have everything there and for cosmetic reasons. The owners have said to us, please make it as close to it was on the day it hit the water as possible with all the fit out and everything, so that's pretty cool for us. We've got license to do all that sort of stuff. Spar 5, both of those spar caps are original, some of the cross doublers original, some are replaced, new spar web. So there we're in the process of riveting it all back together. We've now done that to spars 5, 4, 3 and most of 2. We're doing that on Friday. So they've all been put in storage, ready for when time comes to being reused. Fuselage, that's the rear right-hand side. Lots of it's been drilled out, skin's about to come off, and skin's off. Those of that structure there, I believe there's one frame getting replaced and 3 or 4 of the stringers getting replaced. The rest of it's all getting reused. Some of the frames have to have repairs on them, but that's amazing for us. That's frames 5 and 6. Everything there that light green colour is original. There are a couple of repairs on the frames that I did, but that's what they said, repair things if you can. One repaired fin, some's original, some's donor, some's new. All those green frames are original. The one grey frame there, that's the original one, but it has to be replaced, and it's mostly done from memory. Building a new frame 4, that's how we spend hours stretching the material around handmade wooden formers. That one took some doing, that's it there. It's now been heat treated and ready for fitment. Now, earlier I mentioned there was in the cache, of parts in that container. One of them was a wind machine. Now, Hollywood got hold of 6 Dauntlesses, converted them to similar configuration to that, and used them for generating wind for the movies. We now have one of them in our possession in which we're using. One of the flying Dauntlesses in the world is a genuine ex-Kiwi Dauntless, and it was also one of the wind machines, so it was saved due to being used by Hollywood. That's what it looks like now. We're using it to fit a mule engine on the front of it, so we can fit do all the plumbing and things between the firewall and the engine. That engine is close to being the correct engine. It's actually out of a B-17. The differences are pretty minor. We've got a correct engine on its way to us. It should be here in a week or 2, fully restored, ready to go, of the correct dash number. So we had all these cache parts, container parts, before the fuselage turned up, so I was able to go through and restore all those cowls before the main fuselage got to us. I believe all these cowls are off the wind machine, but we're using them on the B-22. And one of the other young fellas did all the front cowls for us. So that's what it looks like. All the cowls all done, or mostly done. We've got a full set of exhaust. You can see one of them poking out the bottom there. And a lot of the components inside the engine bay. Right, now the best place to follow the restoration is with their Military Aviation Museum website. We're not allowed to publish anything until they have already done it. That's their rules, but that's on theirs how to get there. And they're only a month or so, 6 weeks behind where we're at. I spend large chunks of my time sending them reports. And finally, an unashamed plug. We need engineers. Come build an aeroplane with us, please. If you're a good skin worker, come build a P-40 or a Dauntless. That's us. So, any questions?
So what are you going to do with the wind machine?
Wind machine, at the moment, it's still the possession of Military Aviation Museum. That's for them to decide. Everything is still theirs, even the little scraps of alley are still theirs, so we can't. Once the plane is flying, it will fly here in New Zealand. The wings will be sent to us in a couple of months. They've been done overseas. They'll come here, we'll test fly it. We'll make a big song and dance of it when the time is right. Then it'll get pulled to bits and sent over there. So at that point's when all the future, all the cache of parts, including the wind machine, will be decided. We have thoughts, but they're for us at this point.
Do you have some sort of tentative time scale?
I knew someone was going to ask that. Ballpark, 18 months, 2 years-ish, something like that. You know, we've got a bit of an agreement with them, but that's between us and them. But yeah, somewhere in that ballpark.
Is the original engine recovered from the rig?
I believe it's still on the bottom of the lake. I'm not certain, but it certainly didn't come up on the wreck. It was gone. I mean, I've seen a video footage of a ROV from the bottom, and the engine's detached but down there. I don't know whether it ever came up. So, yeah, I don't know if they brought it up or not. I don't know. So.
Do you source most of your parts rather than put them in? Where do you source all your other parts, like your grease, connectors,
Through the wonderful world of Google. Yeah, it's a mission. It truly is a mission to get anything truly Dauntless original. It's very, very limited out there. I mean, not a lot of countries flew them. So yeah, it's contacts, it's just searching, eBay. Every so often bits turn up on eBay. We found some specialty hydraulic connectors turned up on eBay just randomly, and we grabbed what we need plus. The biggest challenge is getting stock like aluminium extrusion and pipe and stuff. I ordered a whole bunch of extrusion in December 23 and it arrived in November 24, so 11 months later. So that's a pain in the bum to sort. Otherwise, stuff we need to make, we just get people to make it for us. We've got a full set of drawings. Well, not if it's Dauntless related, we've got drawings. If it's another supplier, like Goodyear, for example, for the tyres, we don't have drawings for that stuff. So you can't get the tyres. We have to convert to something else. So.
Have any parts ever turned up from the ones that were scrapped here?
The boss, Steve, has a hydraulic tank, and which he had before we even had the Dauntless. He found it somewhere, and that's, to our knowledge, that's it. Because they were scrapped here in Auckland, we believe they did a pretty good job, and everything was truly scrapped and melted in.
There was a rumour about 15 years ago that someone had taken a few of those and put them in a shed somewhere, complete, from the scrapper.
Pray tell me where it is. I would love to know. I paid massive money for those. Yeah, nothing's ever come forward of any genuine Kiwi ones here in New Zealand, to our knowledge. So.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. It was a pleasure to have you come along, and at very last minute as well. It was only Friday, I think, that you... Thursday I asked, Friday you said yes, and something like that. And very much appreciated. And thanks to everybody who's come along today. This is the last presentation, so I think we have definitely celebrated the 20th anniversary of the Wings Over New Zealand Forum between here and Wigram pretty well. We've had some great talks and great get-togethers. Thank you.
Well done.